thing is, they don't have, I don't think, as much give as a 360 controller trigger does, but they have enough that you could really fine-tune this. And I remember playing, you know, games like House of the Dead and things like that with these triggers that just made sense and made it so much more fun. Then I got a light gun, and I never played that anymore. Anyway, the other thing was, you know, the memory stick ports, right? Back when memory stick ports were important, you actually could have a memory stick like this. And several of the memory sticks, you know, this was part of the great idea of Dreamcast, was to have games built into it. So you could actually have a little portable game here where you could play your game and whatnot. And then when you were done playing your game, you just snap it right back into the Dreamcast, and it actually had the screen on the top. So you could actually snap it into the Dreamcast. It would show, you know, what game you were playing. It showed any kind of information that you needed to have right there. In some ways, it's kind of the first incarnation of what we find with the Wii U, in that it put information in here that you could actually have on the controller that coincided with the game. Most of the time it was just the name of the game, but there were other implementations as well. And the Dreamcast was so wonderfully hackable with Windows CE on it that people started to find other creative things to do with all this stuff. Key weaknesses. You know, I don't really sure what I think about the memory pack stuff. I think that's crazy. But the actual control contact came from the bottom of the controller. Kind of weird. It feels pretty jarring when you get into it, and as you start to move the controller, it isn't that it's uncomfortable, it's just that the wire keeps hitting you wherever you go with it. And I found that to be pretty annoying. So I found that to be a key weakness of the Dreamcast. Other than that, I think it is that same kind of parallel mentality. You know, your hands should be close, but they're parallel to each other. You know, compare that to a 360 again, where everything just kind of, I mean, you can just see the position of my hands are so much easier. I can literally do this, and it holds on completely well, and it's just perfect in that regard. So that leads me to this. I agree with all of you guys. I think there is a different controller that works for all the different situations, and really you could have a best controller for every genre. If I'm going to pick the most influential controller, which is how several of you answered the questions, no doubt about it in my mind, the best and the most influential controller of all time is the Super Nintendo controller. Every single controller since then has utilized elements of the Super Nintendo controller. And if I'm going to go with the best controller of all time in terms of most complete, it has everything you need, and it has the fewest problems, even though there are still problems with it, I'm going to have to go with the 360 controller. I think it is the best controller of all time. I have yet to hold, I think it's very versatile, right? So if you cover all those bases, this will cover you in almost every situation. You can play FPS with this. You can still comfortably play a platformer, and it's not jarring or weird in any stretch of the imagination. So for me, this is the most complete controller. I haven't held an Xbox One controller yet. I obviously haven't held a PS4 controller yet, but I'm looking forward to holding both of those and kind of seeing. Several of you talked about the idea that a controller went into your thought about purchasing. I think that's great. I mean, I think that makes a ton of sense. I remember when the PS3 was announced, when they had the Batarang controllers, that everybody was kind of like, what the hell is that, right? Here's the one thing I'll say, and I hope that the PS4 and the Xbox One get this thing right. I don't see any reason why the Kinect and the PlayStation Move didn't do this better. Although the PlayStation Move kind of did this, the Kinect didn't do it, and it pissed me off. But the new PS4 controller is going to do it really well, and I have a feeling the Xbox One is going to do it as well. You couldn't just take a stock controller, sit in front of the screen, and use both this mechanism to control the game and the camera mechanism to control the game. And that was always frustrating to me. So why is it that the Kinect can't sense that I have a controller in my hand and I'm still going to use the controller, right? So whereas perhaps I could just hold this thing right in front of me using the D-pad and the trigger up here and even the bumper up here if I wanted to, maybe even the select button if I needed, or the D-pad, right? So I have this hand on it, and why couldn't I use this hand to do something else, right? That always blew my mind. Why not be able to, you know, maybe even point a gun or something like this and move with this and then point the gun with this? That to me makes total sense. I could still fire here, right? Or or even, you know, have some kind of mechanism here. I don't know, but my point is, I mean, obviously PlayStation Move does that, but I don't understand why we couldn't just use a stock controller. You didn't have to buy another controller, blah, blah, blah. Clearly PS4 is doing that. They're going to have Move functionality with the camera right here. So you're going to be able to have the controller in your hand controlling the game. For me, the idea of controller-less is kind of flawed, and that's what Kinect, that was the vision of Kinect. I don't buy that. Controller-less is BS. What I want is the perfect melding of a controller and a control-less world to make those things more fun. That, to me, will be the ideal situation, and what will ideally, I think, replace the Xbox 360 as the best controller of all time. Okay, we talked about a lot of controllers there, and there are a lot of things I obviously didn't show. I was kind of surprised that people mentioned the Atari controller. That thing is not good for anything but nostalgia. I could easily say the same thing for the first joysticks I ever used, which were on my Commodore 64. Which were, you could actually had suction cups in the bottom. You could go stick them to the wall and then use the joystick. It was particularly helpful when you were like playing, you know, Winter Olympics and you had to, like, you know, snow ski through the Alps. Point is, those things were huge. They were difficult to use and kind of unresponsive, and I found them to be very problematic in that regard. The Atari controller was the same way. I think, no doubt, many of you are probably going to have a preference for the DualShock controller or the SNES controller. I think that's completely fine. That makes total sense to me. I think that's completely legitimate placed, you know, to put those controllers at the top of the list. No question about it. I think everybody's entitled to their opinion. My opinion, 360 is the best of all time. I can't wait to see what the next generation of controllers is going to look like, however. All right, now we've got to move on to the discussion for next time, which I think you guys are really going to have a good time answering, and I think it's a pretty thought-provoking kind of question that will, at least last time I asked about something similar, we had a huge uptick in comments. So I'm looking forward to this. Looking forward to some female commenters on this one as well, as I think this is I'm really interested to see how you guys are going to answer this question, although it is not gender determinate, which is ironic considering the question. So a long time ago, I read, it wasn't a long time ago, but it was probably, you know, more than 6 months ago. I remember reading an article, it was an interview with Notch, who created Minecraft, and they asked him, why is the main character in Minecraft always a man? And why couldn't the main character be a woman, and maybe you could actually just select, you know, as you're going to the game, could you just select male or female and then be that, you know, character throughout that game? And Notch got in a little bit of hot water because he said, no, the lead character of Minecraft is always a man. It's always a male, right? And I remember him being kind of in hot water about that. He said that's not going to change. It doesn't mean that you can't skin it as a woman. Many of you that play Minecraft skin, you know, the main character as a female. But it got me thinking about characters in video games, which led me to a question that I want to ask you guys for next week, which goes like this. Is it important to occupy a specific gender in video games? As in, is it important that you as a player occupy in your mind a specific gendered character while you're playing? Think about that. Think about the myriad games that you've played over time and the characters and what they are and what they represent. Maybe sit down with one of your favorite games and play them and see how you're thinking about the world that you're playing in. I think there are some really cool games that could shed some light on this conversation, but I'm going to leave that to you. So, for next time, answer the doozy of a question of whether it's important or not to identify as and occupy as a specific gender within video game worlds. That is the question for the next Weekly Ringer. Folks, thanks for watching as always. I appreciate all the comments. I appreciate the viewership. Thanks for bearing with me during those times when I'm not as responsive as I want to be, because if in a perfect world I would love for this video series to be every single week, all the time. But unfortunately that's not the way that it works. That's okay. As I said before, we're coming up on the 100th episode. That means I need your help. Please make suggestions. If you have suggestions for questions that you'd like to see in the 100th episode, or if you'd like to see me do anything in particular, or you'd like to see any kind of theme in particular, or whatever the case might be, all you have to do is send me a question. You can send it to me at Commodore 128 at clanofthegraywolf.com. Or you can always shoot me a line on Twitter. Follow me at It's the Commodore, all one word. Or you can just send me a message, a private message, over the website if you are a registered user of the website as well. So send those things on. Give me any contributions that you might have for the Weekly Wringer, things you think might be able to make the show better, things that you would like to see as a part of the show. Whatever the case might be, you got suggestions of any kind, I am all ears. I've only been doing this for 100 episodes in 2.5 years, folks. So, there's definitely room for improvement. Anyway, thank you, as always, for watching The Weekly Wringer here on clanofthegraywolf.com. I am the Commodore, and there is no reset button.